Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the conversation with Harold and Dave. We got Greg here. Well, guess what? The market's crazy and Trump is still trumping. Let's talk about it.
Definitely. It's the conversation. Y'all ready? Let's go. No filter, no restrictions. You about to get my opinion in its purest form. So my words, don't try to spin them. What I said is what I said. And what I said, I meant it. The gloves are off now when I'm coming out swinging. So engage in verbal combat, but you better be ready. Cause this here for me is light work, even if the topic's heavy. I'm ready for it all with no running from nothing. You just take the time to digest what I put in, no rushing. But time is moving, don't waste it. You want the real, come and face it. Come sit and talk to me if you want it straight without a chaser. And it might burn a little when you step on up to taste it. But it's nothing harsh, I promise. Just a little conversation.
All right, the conversation here with Greg. And of course, we have our stock expert, Greg Breheim here. CMT. Tell them what that is, Greg.
Yeah, so CMT stands for Chartered Market Technician. Basically, it just means that I'm a nerd and I'm a professional when it comes to analyzing and forecasting stock prices. Chartered Market Technician.
Good Lord, the knowledge visible on my screen makes me feel inadequate. But
Not at all.
First thing I want to start off with, of course, we're going to talk about the stock market. Greg is going to talk a lot about how the president's affected the market. I've never seen a president affect the market so much in my life of paying attention to presidencies. I always thought presidents don't really have that much of effect on the market. And Trump said, hold my beer. Okay, yep. So we'll talk about that. But two things that I've seen a lot of videos over the weekend, of course, on TikTok, I regret my votes have just been all over the place. But the one that I've seen people sometimes get a little harsh on, and I don't know how to feel about because they're saying, I hope you get everything you deserve, is the videos with Latinos for Trump. And now their reactions to things that are happening, Venezuelans for Trumps. A lot of these people, like the young lady that was on CNN, who was protected under the Biden policy, she's not a U.S. citizen, but she was giving the right to be here, and she has a fear of her kids going to school one day and being snatched away. So they have real fears out there. How real they are, people will debate that all day. But I'll start with you, Harold. You're in Miami. That's a more Hispanic town than North Carolina and Minnesota. So what's the temperature down there in Miami?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of uneasiness. A number of people in different Hispanic communities are afraid, and there's been also news reports of heightened ICE agents, within our community. So, I'm one who promotes empathy towards others, but I find it interesting that when during this whole campaign, when there were attacks on various other communities, other Hispanic communities, i.e., Mexicans and the like, people were less empathetic. They didn't care. And now that it's hitting them in the face, they want now support and empathy from everyone else. And I think it's hypocrisy at its best. But here in Miami, we're just kind of, it's almost like a wait and see. You don't know where they're going to pop up, when they're going to pop up, but they are going to pop up.
Ooh, I wouldn't want to live life like that. Would not want to live life like that. Dave.
And if I can add, you have graduation ceremonies that are taking place now where ICE agents can show up at graduation sessions, as well as now they're also showing up at immigration courts. So,
well, there's been you know what's so funny? And Dave, you can comment on this. The debate over, is there enough funding to have enough border agents and processors to help with the expediting of citizenship? But we're able to hire ICE agents out the yazoo.
Only because you're disregarding all budgetary processes. You've seen people come to Congress, and it's boring budget talks, but people have blown through their departmental budgets and as if they don't matter. And so you have spent tremendous amounts of money on things, and we're here, and it's just now May, and the fiscal year goes to October, and so you're going to see a lot of emergency funding being passed, and it's just irresponsible. There isn't the money, there isn't the staff, but they're spending it anyway.
Jesus. So that should turn out all right.
I can't imagine anything going wrong.
We'll go over budget because it seems like that's their priority,
You know? What's a budget? We'll put it on the credit card.
Our credit card.
Yeah.
Oh,
For the next
they've
generation.
cut so much money from all these other agencies. There's plenty of money, right? They're buying into this idea, false premise, that Doge has saved all this money that they think is going to be available, but budget processes don't work that way. Money is allocated in certain bank, and you can reallocate, but you need to get Congress involved, and so there's just the Dan Dresner calls it recursive incompetence. That's what we're seeing from these guys, just this repeating constant incompetence, and they're going to come in with their hair on fire to Congress and need some emergency money, and they may get it at some point, they may not get it.
Every time you guys say things like that, and I go on, it's one thing I go on. I'm going to show some of these later on TikTok. You say things like that, and the first thing they yell is, "Oh, quiet down, you softy leftist." you
Not a
liberal.
leftist, sorry.
I know, but that's
soft, but I'm 62. It happens to all of us.
That's supposed to be the go-to insult, that you're soft. And
I thought it was that I was gay. I thought that was the insult. Isn't that the insult that always comes out from the left? Is you must be gay. You're not a alpha male.
Yes, you've been called that. Dave, you know what? It's amazing. I thought when I started this show, I thought Harold would get a lot more than you, but you take 80% of the abuse.
I'm glad you invited me on board to do this.
But you take so much of the abuse. How dare, and the one you take the abuse on is how dare you be Caucasian and talk so much about the plight of minorities and women? How dare you be a Caucasian male and bring those things up? How dare you?
I mean, I would understand that if you said you don't understand, so I don't have the right to comment on it. I might be sympathetic to that. Otherwise, I don't know. I thought I was being Christian and caring about other people. I don't know. Just I thought those were things that we were supposed to do. But I guess I was taught wrong in Sunday school.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
All right, Greg. So why because
I'm in a mood tonight. Damn.
Anytime during a debate, if somebody just goes straight to insults, that just shows that it shows a lack of intelligence or lack of knowledge on the subject.
Yeah, you've won that argument when people go straight to insults. That's the last ditch effort, right?
Instant dub.
So, Greg, kind of break it down for us because we talked to an economist a year ago. Wow, a year ago, and one of the things we all were talking about is presidents don't affect the market that much. Why has the market been so affected now by President Trump?
That's a great question. And if I may, can I share my screen and I can kind of go over what's happened, what may happen in the future, and just kind of what Trump has done?
Data?
Oh, no, you're going to piss all of the MAGA people off if you put data on here. Well, wait, yeah, you can share your screen, but you act like this is Zoom and I just hit the button really quick. Let me go.
Oh, no, you're good.
Pull it up for you. Okay. There we go. Wait, hold on, Greg. Just give me a second. It's there, but hold on, Greg. They can't hear you yet. Okay, go ahead. Now they can hear you.
Okay, excellent. So this is basically just a chart of the S&P 500. When people think about the market, this is what we're talking about. And I just want to recap a few points of what has happened over the past year or so. So right over here, this was when Trump was elected. So the market screamed up. We knew that tariffs were coming, but we didn't really have much of the details. So market just kind of chops around, meanders, goes up a little bit, has a steep sell-off in March. Then right over here, this was Liberation Day. So this is the day where Trump was basically announcing all of his tariffs. People thought, oh, this is going to be so great. Market's going to go up to the moon. Nope. The market proceeded to drop about 16% in just 4 trading days. So imagine your 401k, you've got $1 million in it. That's down $160,000 in 4 days. And at this point, at this point in time, the market was looking pretty bad. Like it could continue to drop further. A lot of people were even pulling from their 401ks, paying the tax penalties on it, you name it. And right over here, this big, weird green candle was the day that Trump announced, hey, we're going to do a 90-day pause on tariffs. We're going to just talk this out, sort things through. And the market rallied 12% in a single day, to 10 to 12%. It was one of the biggest green days in market history. And
okay, right there, Greg.
What's up?
He said we're putting a 90-day pause.
Yep.
The green candle that shoots up to the sky.
Yep.
Wouldn't you just say, all right, let's stop right here. This is definitely not working. Let's stay this course.
You know, he's got a plan, and we don't know the full plan, and that's kind of the uncertainty that's been driving the order flow, the supply and demand of the overall market. I hypothesized that Trump really needed to walk back the tariffs because the bond market was collapsing. And I'm not going to get too nerdy about this, but this is the TLT. This is the 20-year Treasury bond ETF. If you go in your brokerage account and buy this, it's like you're loaning your money out to the United States government. You're going to get a guaranteed, quote unquote, 5% interest. And by the way, this is all for educational purposes only. None of this is an offer to buy or sell any security. I'm just drawing on some charts. But the bond market was crashing. And this basically just kind of tells us global investor confidence in the United States. So as you see this chart sell off, people are believing less and less into the creditworthiness of the United States. And so that's why I think Trump walked back those tariffs. And, he's gotten some other trade deals done. They could be a little bit more substantial, but the market has actually recovered well from the lows. And so basically what has been affected the most by the tariffs? Well, Apple. Apple is a big, it does a lot of business with China. So Apple has been taking some big hits. It's been relatively weak. Semiconductors, our chip stocks tend to get hit a little bit harder, but those have recovered nicely. Nike and Target, their cost of goods sold for their supply chain. Nike's suffered a lot this year, and it's well beneath its fair value, intrinsic value. Target stock, stock.
Target had a little different problem of why their stock plunged. That's a whole different area right there.
It can be multiple things at one time, and so basically what's going on is what's next? Well, we still have the tariffs looming over our heads, but the market is starting to recover. And I think it's because the administration might be relying on AI to save us all. I don't know if it can or can't. That's really difficult to say. But stocks like NVIDIA have been doing very, very well. They just reported earnings and stock is up. And NVIDIA is a big weight. Basically, what NVIDIA does is they can create custom chips for other companies. And it's a really, really unique business model. So that's basically what's been going on in the overall market. Some stocks that aren't affected by the tariffs, think of Netflix stock. Netflix stock has just been completely resilient the past few months, just absolutely cruising towards all-time highs. It's tough to put a tariff on something like a Netflix subscription, right? So that's just a brief rundown of what's happened in the markets. They have recovered super well. And the question just becomes, will there be another tweet? What's going to be happening next? And that's the next question.
Greg, could you do me a favor? Could you put the S&P back up and then toggle to the 20-year Treasury? So this is the S&P. Let me just say this, my interpretation. I see the S&P and All right, you got them side by side. Where are we?
Yep, we're on a daily chart, and I'm just going to remove some indicators so that it kind of
All right.
cleans up. So daily time frame.
S&P S&P is basically investor expectation of future earnings of a collection of stocks, right? And so the prices here are people's private judgments. As an academic, right? I look at this and I say this is indicative of people's judgments about how these companies are going to do. Those have recovered. On the other side, we have the Treasury, right?
Yep.
And my big point was, yeah, the stock market, the S&P, the Dow, they've recovered. The bond market has, looks like it's taking a random walk to the seventh level of hell. And um and so, right there, I think we have a judgment of, judgment of the crowd, judgment of the masses of investors that I think there's a big difference. And so one is like I say, to a large extent, the S&P is a judgment on private companies, and the 20-year treasuries are going to be private judgments, and basically central banks around the world are very big players in that market as well, because they usually hold their foreign reserves in T-bills.
Yep.
They've actually sold off gold for decades now. They've lowered their holdings in gold to buy T-bills. And so I'm looking at this and I'm saying stock market might have recovered, bond market hasn't, and that makes my blood run cold. That chart should really worry you if you're looking at American government and its management of the economy.
Greg,
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. And just to add to that too, it's important to remember that interest rates are inverse to bond prices. So interest rates are rising. Investors need to be compensated for the extra risk that comes with investing in the United States. Moody's just downgraded the United States credit rating. And so what happens? Bond market sells off a little bit more. So you'll get a higher interest rate, but what happens if interest rates spike and go crazy? Nobody wants the bonds. We have a problem on our hands now.
Well, and the cost of borrowing for our enormous debt
It's going up.
goes up, and we're falling into an abyss where whatever debt we were carrying is now much more expensive than it was. And supposedly we were going to cut the debt, but we don't see the big beautiful bill. Does not. It adds to the deficit, thereby adding to the debt. And so this is a five-alarm fire in a
Yeah,
lot of ways here.
okay, Greg,
I
Greg,
completely agree.
Greg.
What's
I've got two questions. Well, I got a statement and a question from the audience. Rashad Stubbs says reports coming out that the trade courts invalidated the tariffs. So that's a comment he's made. And then he's made the comment, what do you think is going to happen before 9:30 a.m.?
on what?
What trade courts is this person referring to?
Tweet.
I need a
Tweet.
little bit more context.
Right. I was going to say that. I just thought I was doing that for the entertainment value. But he said reports coming out that the trade courts invalidated the tariffs. I haven't looked into that, so I saw a couple of head shakes. Is that what's happened recently?
Yeah, there is an article I know in CNN that
Well, I'm
mentions
reading
that.
this article right now.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not run down the person who posted this at all.
No,
You
no,
know,
I'm laughing about
the
the
Federal
second.
Trade Court on Wednesday blocked President Trump from imposing sweeping tariffs and imports under an Emergency Power Act. Uh, and so they're saying he exceeded his authority. And, well, wow, talk about breaking effing news. Um, that article was posted 6 minutes after we started this.
Oh, no way. So we actually can't know.
Like, no, I'm serious. May 28, 8:06 p.m. Eastern time. So this is breaking news. There are trade courts, right? And there is an international trade court, and it handles stuff, and I'm vague on it. Always have to look these things up. But this will be interesting to see if the Trump administration buys into it at all.
That could be another reason why the S&P 500 is up 1.5% after hours, literally just as we got on. The markets love when the tariffs get pulled back, anything like that.
Of course
Well,
they
Greg,
do, because they understand, they're just things that the whole idea that people are like shocked. Oh, we actually pay the tariffs, not the foreign country. It's like, yeah, that's just how they work. We've been telling you that. Like, did you not understand that? Okay, that's schoolhouse rock shit. That's just an objective fact.
Exactly. Well, what they're saying, though, at the White House is they're saying, oh, don't worry, you won't pay the tariff. It's a tax on a foreign country on foreign goods. Don't worry, it won't affect you at all. But it
well,
does.
but it started in his first term when he said that if Mexico didn't pay for the wall, he would just impose tariffs to make them pay. And then from there, it, I guess, grew a pair of legs, arms, and started running down the street with other notions of the same. But Greg, a couple of things I wanted to ask real quick.
Yeah, what's up?
I had heard that one thing that caused the market to kind of spike up or get his attention was Japan sold off some of its shares. I don't know if it was bonds or what it owned as far or parts of our debt. And then the other piece is when you continue to see the type of behavior we're seeing with tariffs on, tariffs off, that breeds a whole market manipulation
Yep.
concern for me.
I
So
completely agree.
all of
And
that.
actually, I wanted to touch on that big green day where the market was up 11% in a single day. Prior to that, Trump had tweeted, buy stocks. And you can also look at the order flow. There were a ton of what's called out of the money call option buying. So basically, this is an advanced derivative where you can put in something like $10, and that day, every $10 turned into $4,000. So imagine you put $100 into this option contract, you make 40 grand. There was a ton of out of the money call buying. I think that day, if they go back and review the records, if the SEC could somehow investigate it, that day will go down as the biggest insider trading day in market history. I think there is a lot of market manipulation. The market's always been manipulated, but even nowadays, it gets even more complicated with AI, algorithms, more insider info. I really don't like that. I really do want a free market for all, but I can't police it.
Yeah, and AI is going to do what it does.
When it comes to this, I think the SEC is going to have to investigate the fact that Trump tweeted buy now means it's not insider trading.
That's
This
true.
is
That's
my
true.
thing. Everyone had that option, but not to dash all of Harold's hopes.
Mhm.
That I sometimes look at that as, was that cover, right? Did
Yeah.
they email anybody, or did people in Trump's administration email anybody with specific information that went beyond that general Pollyanna statement? At which point you got him. You got him by the what, and it's time to squeeze, twist,
Paper
pull,
trail.
bite. But it may not be Trump that gets caught in that.
Mhm.
I have a feeling a lot of people in the food chain are the ones who got on the signal chat and shared information. The
Yeah.
SEC will get to these people in
Just
their. It may be after Trump is out of office. Statute of limitations is what, 7 years or 5?
believe
Let's
five,
hope for 7.
or
I
depends on
remember.
the crime. Yeah, just imagine you get like a text, hey, I'm going to announce that I'm pausing tariffs for 90 days. Do what you will with that information. You know?
So let's go,
Yeah, but
Rashad. When he said, "What do you think is going to happen before 9:30 a.m.?" He was referring to bonds.
Oh, bonds. Well, currently the bond market is selling off after hours. It's difficult to say the exact, you know, price or thing that's going to happen. Oh, do you want me to share my screen? I can if
No,
you
no,
want.
no, no. You're good. I mean, you
Okay.
can.
I can just talk about it.
Yeah, just talk
Yeah,
about
the bond market. It's actually just flat. I would just say monitor, price action, monitor the lows. You can get super nerdy with technical analysis, but I don't really have an opinion on the bonds before tomorrow morning. They're in a longer term downtrend. Interest rates are in an uptrend. I have to assume that trend will continue until acted upon by an equal or opposite force.
This decision, if it wasn't if there wasn't an awareness of it, and it sound, I don't know, I don't have my finger. I'm in the woods of Maine. I was chopping wood today. I'm not following this stuff.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't baked in to the market already, as we say, like a lot of things are, this would be very positive news. This will have people, if this holds up, this is the kind of thing that will probably make a good day tomorrow. Um, you know, because this is illegal. All right, he has an authority to put tariffs on in cases of national emergency. He claimed there was an emergency because since 1972 we've had a trade deficit, something that's been going on since. Greg, were you born in 1972?
Not that I recall. I was
Okay,
probably
I'm
just a
just
little
saying.
sperm, you know.
You know, any
I was born
anyone
before
under
2000,
50
though.
is it's 50 years ago. It's always been patently absurd to claim that authority. I thought Congress was going to take it from him. I've been waiting, but I've also been wondering about the courts. And so these guys are coming in. Somebody filed the right lawsuit in the right place. We'll see. They're going to have to appeal it. I can't imagine this thing being overturned because it is on its face a very obvious abuse of the power in that legislation that the president has. Um, but all of those things are always written with the widest discretion given to the executive, blah blah blah. But we'll have to see if it holds. If it holds, this is the best news for the American economy I can imagine.
All right.
You know, not just in terms of lowering tariffs, but doing away with the uncertainty. Right, this guy has been just going back and forth. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Why would you invest in anything? I mean, forget investing in building a factory, right, which needs to pay off over 10 years. Whatever incentives you have will have to be in place for 10, if they're going to motivate you to build, have to be in place long enough for you to recoup your investment of hundreds of millions of dollars, which is easily a 10-year investment. I mean, just to order now, the thing is so volatile and uncertain. To order something from China now, you're kind of like, well, I don't know what things are going to be like. Are there tariffs now? Will they be lower later? And so people have not been ordering stuff. And, we're about to lose Christmas. For a lot of retailers, they're coming into the months where they need to place their Christmas orders. And I've heard from small business retailers in testimony in Congress, they're in danger of, they've lost the summer, they've lost the fall. They're like, are we going to be able to put our orders in for Christmas, for the places that have a lead time? And, we're really going to have some pain. If this says he can't do it and it sticks, it brings back a level of certainty,
Yeah.
right?
You can
And
forecast and
will
project.
save Trump from himself, which is not good if you hate Trump, but is good if you like America and are like our economy to work.
I like America and our economy.
Yeah, I do. I'm sorry, that was a long tirade, but
No, that was very good. I mean, again, yeah, you want to be able to forecast and project, and if you can't do that, it's really tough to run a business. Plain and simple. You also don't know if there's going to be a recession or a rolling recession or any form of it. And so making a ton of investments right before a recession can just wipe you out. But if you think that there's a lower chance of a recession, you want to invest aggressively, catch the next bull run, catch the next bull market, whether it's in your actual business or in other companies. So I do like more certainty. I do like being able to project cash flows. It's nice.
it's essential. I mean,
Yeah.
it's essential for a functioning, growing economy. If you don't want to be in negative growth territory,
Yeah.
if you want to have that standard 2 to 3% growth that we've come to count on,
Mm.
you
That
know,
that brings me into when we were talking about the deficit. What's your opinion for how to get out of that deficit? A big argument is, oh, we need to actually just outgrow our debt. Do you see any other way? Spend less, make more?
Jeffrey Sachs has commented on this, so I'll give you Jeffrey Sachs's answer.
Okay.
He says at this point, you cannot cut the Doge plan. To cut out was arithmetically nonsense to begin with. His point is that you probably can't grow out of it.
Mm,
That your only hope is going to be in raising revenue, which means raising taxes. And
yep.
nobody wants to do that.
Nope.
And so they're going to try to grow out of it. But right now, their strategies for growth are strategies that were tried in Latin America in the 1970s and didn't work.
What were
Import
some of those
substitution.
strategies? What
Well,
comes
the
to
whole
mind?
let's tariff
Oh,
to
yeah.
bring companies back, and that will grow. It's import substitution industrialization,
Okay.
and it never worked. They're pushing manufacturing. They want to pick winners, right? Which has always been part of from a conservative economic point of view. No, you don't do that. They want to have industrialization when, in fact, we make more money in the service sector.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, it is just kind of like, look, we are a great economy. We have problems domestically with things, but in terms of growth, we're pretty well optimized.
Mhm.
And
We're good at
my
winning.
thing though is that they're on a path to they're making worse. That bond chart, they're making the cost of maintaining the deficit worse. They're going backwards, right? And that's like a balloon payment, an adjustable rate mortgage, right? They're kind of have where it's the payments ballooning. Um, their ideas of how to grow are, I think, not going to produce much. And we're one of the most developed economies in the world. We're at the bleeding edge. You don't get much more than 3% growth,
Mhm.
right? On an annual basis. Um, all developed economies grow. China can get, a developing nation can get 10-15% growth. An OECD nation is going to be, 4 is an awesome day. At about 4%, the Fed starts worrying about overheating,
Yeah,
honestly.
raising rate.
And so
So
you have a real upper limit on the rate at which the economy can grow. These guys are trying to find the lower limit, as far as I can see, with their policies, because they just simply don't understand economics and how it works.
well, the question. So one thing, but we're leaving some people out here. When we're talking about stocks and we're talking about tariffs and we're talking about all these things, the biggest disconnect is who is it affecting the most? Because common people think when you're talking about stocks, oh, that's stuff that pertains to the rich. It only affects people with money, right? These are the things only affecting them. How do these things affect middle to lower income people? We're talking about when the stocks are jolting up and down because of things the president might say or tweet. Because this is what you hear around. So, I'm a server. I don't care about this stuff. Doesn't affect me. I work at Burger King. This stuff doesn't affect me.
I'll say one thing. So, stagflation is a market environment where there's slow growth and high inflation. So, people potentially are getting paid less at their jobs and everything starts to cost more. Tariffs could potentially lead to a stagflationary environment.
Yes,
That's
you may
my
work
answer to
at
that.
Burger King, but if the materials that you're using at Burger King are out, you're getting them from another country that's receiving tariffs. That means that business is spending more money, which means you're going to get less money. Harold, what were you going to say?
Well, I mean, I was going back to your question. One thing that came to mind was, what percentage of us in America who are middle class are actually involved and engaged in the stock market? Because that's another challenge and that's another area. And I definitely know within the Black community, your rates are much less than other communities. Because again, it's a matter of trust, having your money out there for the long term. That's not something culturally that we tend to do as Black people. So when I'm looking at it from that perspective, a lot of us don't do the education or seek the education that's needed to understand the stock market. So that we understand it is a long term investment. Trust me, my financial advisor, when 2016 hit and things started tanking, I was concerned about my retirement. The hit that I took. When I guess I think I want to say it's May, somewhere in May, April, May, when the stock market took its dive. Right around COVID. So it's something that again we're not used to hearing. Somebody lost X amount of dollars or willing to risk X amount of dollars in the long haul. So this is almost a conversation that some communities won't necessarily be giving much energy to or attention to, but it is still an important and valid conversation because it's what makes our world go round.
Which they don't understand. It does because, people at the top of the chain, an amount of money is never enough.
Mm.
You had people upset when COVID hit at the owner CEO of Starbucks when he wasn't going to do those mass layoffs, and he said, "So we make $2.1 billion this year instead of 2.4." So sad for me. And a lot of people were like, "Whoa, let's not start a trend here." Go ahead, Dave.
I would say about the stock market, though, there's the stock market as having a direct impact on you.
Mhm.
And then there's the stock market as the collective judgments of investors, the
Yep.
stock market as information. And prices are priceless information, we might say. And that's kind of as I remember, I'm an academic, right? So I look at these things. I'm not invested in the market. I don't know. But I look at it and I say, hey, look, these are investors betting on the future profitability of these companies. They are putting money into this company, betting that it will do well. And the more people that think it will do well, the higher the price goes. And when people start saying that company is going to do poorly, the price goes down. So when the market goes down, whether or not you're playing in the market, that is a bunch of people betting their money, right? Take it as a betting future, right? They're betting that it's going to be less money. And so if a bunch of companies are making less money in the United States, what do you think that's going to do, right? You think that that's not going to be good. It also is, so it's an indicator based on the judgment of a lot of people who are betting their money.
Yep. So you can kind of see what's going on. And even if you're not invested in the market directly, a lot of people around you may be. And so that's another thing to consider as well.
I think everybody's affected by it. I don't think it's
Yeah.
just, of course, there's people that it's affected more, but I think it's an effect on everybody. You know, when people who have the money lose money, they want it back, and that usually means you suffer.
No, definitely. And
So,
also, when you start to lose money, you start to get a little bit more emotional. Maybe you won't make the best choices, like pulling your 401k out after the market has dropped a lot. That's a really bad decision. Even pulling your 401k out when the market's really high, you got to pay a lot of taxes. You want to be tax efficient. You want to basically just position yourself for your goals. And I agree with Harold. There needs to be much more education. I want everybody to participate in the wealth of the stock market or just in any way, shape, or form, but they need to think about their goals and how they can do that.
shareholders is becoming a dirty word.
Yeah,
What's
well,
the
I
word?
have my
What'd you say, Greg?
What's a dirty word?
Shareholder.
Oh, shareholder.
Yeah, we got it. It's the shareholders. We got it. We got to do the shareholders. We have to. That's gambling, not investing. Were you saying that to
Probably
that's,
pulling out your 401k.
yeah, that's
That's
gambling, not
gambling.
investing.
Yeah.
Well,
Don't
people
do
get scared. I mean, they get scared. They feel like, I don't have $160,000 to lose in 4 days, so I
Yeah.
can't judge someone for going. I mean, he lost what some people would in a two-parent home, both working, don't make in a year.
Yeah. And this goes back to the education. If you know how to hedge a portfolio, you can buy S&P 500 put options, you can buy inverse ETFs, and then boom, your portfolio stays the same. You can pull off those hedges, and then you're sitting pretty. But again, that is a little bit more about timing the market. Don't do that unless you're a professional.
Yeah.
I like the Rip Van Winkle concept. You put your
Uh-oh.
money in a nice index fund, and then you forget it exists.
I'm gonna put my
Do
money
not
in.
look at it. You rip it. You go to sleep for 20 years and wake up. Uh, I'm a big fan of behavioral economics. You might
Oh,
find
yeah.
some
Important.
people are meant to
This
be on the
unlevered
cutting
pump trade
edge.
looks
Oh,
ready to,
yeah.
but the
Well,
market hasn't spotted it yet. Oh,
studies show that like the accounts of dead people where they just didn't have access to their brokerage accounts outperformed most hedge funds. Just dead people. They just forgot
Harold,
about
Harold, you know who had it right? Great great grandpa and grandma. Just put the shit under a mattress and hope for the best. Okay.
Well, listen,
Now,
but
now we see
what's
why
interesting,
James Brown buried all that money in the yard. And the story came out, and they still found money. How James Brown, because he died basically broke, but he had yards and yards full of money where he would just bury it.
and that's an old mindset, even back in the days of the Great Depression,
Mhm.
where banks would not accept dollars from, black people. So they had to put it in their mattress or in their closet or wherever they put it. And then it was, I guess you could almost say, a blessing in disguise, because when the Great Depression happened, they had money, unbeknownst to others. And they were able to even save, I think it was Cadillac, the one automaker, during the Great Depression, when they were able to buy Cadillacs and everybody else is in suit lines. So it was kind of crazy. Little history nugget, little known fact.
You go from your money's no good here to please give me your money. All right, it's that time where we go over. I'm only going to do two of these, some comments
Uh-oh.
from the videos that we've had. We're going to start here because I don't understand this guy's response. You guys are much smarter than me. So I'd like to. Why is this not unmuting?
Statistics, it's also the word war that is used, because if you use certain words, that also gets MAGA people fired up. Well, what do we call Canada? Canada. He calls Canada a what do they call them? A
You wanted to call him the
tariff
51st state.
abuser. Tariff abuser. A tariff abuser. So we use
Oh,
the word
wow.
tariff abuser. And they use these things. It's not just statistics. It's all.
So that was me commenting on when he called Canada a tariff abuser. And so this guy responds, and I don't know what this means. Yeah, sure. Like the price of the component steel or aluminum in any product is only a minor part of the product, like in Budweiser Light. So it might influence like only 1 to 5% of sales price. But anyway, you're repeating old lines because the real game is negotiation. Like, where have you been? So he's saying this is what's happening now.
where you been?
Negotiations is what's happening. That's what he's doing. It's something that American presidents haven't been doing, and apparently he's doing it, and he's negotiating. That's the point that I am missing. And then, of course, I got to show this one because you always got to show it when it's Dave because those get the best reactions. So, uh, let's go ahead and show that one. Oh no, what happened? Wait, which one's that one? Okay, yeah, share. Go back and move that on down.
This is riveting streaming.
There you guys go. Oh, this happens on lives all the time. That's why it's when you do a pre-record, you can do the fancy edits and take out all of that stuff. Here we go.
Product that it uses steel or aluminum is now going to have a 25% increase in cost, because a tariff is a tax. This is just what's so amazing. The anti-tax group wants to say, oh, tariffs are great. No, it's a tax. It raises prices. They're trying to say it's going to lower prices. And I'm like, no, it doesn't lower prices. Now, countervailing duties might lower the price of Jack Daniels to the point that Jack Daniels is already laying off workers and is in, dire straits, right? So who knows what'll happen there. But when how do you think you lower prices by adding a cost? It defies logic. So every product that it uses steel or aluminum is now going to have a 25% increase.
Okay, that's what. Okay, I read the response to the wrong video. Okay, now that guy's, well, it still doesn't make sense, but that's what that guy was responding to. Your rant about aluminum. So
Right. It's
what?
a 25% cost right, yes, to the part that's steel. And yes, in some things the steel is less valuable, right? But it doesn't make it less expensive. Okay? I mean, it makes it more, and it depends. In the past, when you've put tariffs on and prevented steel from coming in the US, the availability of steel goes down. We have a lot of experience with the Bush tariffs, and we know this is a bad idea, and so I didn't say it was 25% of the oval cars. No, I didn't put a footnote in there about all the other stuff, but come on. Um, but we also notice that we need to pivot away from the argument because we can't deal with the truth of that argument. And that is just an objective fact. A tariff is a tax, it adds costs. We move to negotiating the tariff that we're going to have. And so we move away from the idea of tariffs being a part of reindustrialization and reshoring and bringing in a golden age to tariffs being a temporary measure that will extract concessions from people. And so we have to abandon the field and argue something different because, and they can, because the policy is so inconsistent that you can switch back and forth between it's a negotiation, it's a new industrial policy, and it's a new source of tax. Remember the revenue. Remember the revenue, right? We're going to raise revenue from tariffs and solve all our problems, but not if it's a negotiation. So, all right, get on to the next one.
Dave Sober said tariffs was a short term for a long term agreement, or pretty much should be done here soon.
What agreement? I just don't. It's
There is no
it is
agreement. He's imposing.
Dave, before you say that, you and Harold, my response was, tell me you don't know what you're talking about while telling me you don't know what you're talking about.
I cringed from the grammar.
That's great.
I don't know what they think they're going to get. Right. One of the biggest problems being a free trade or trade liberalization advocate is that when you win, when you get NAFTA, for instance, it's a little bit better. The economy is a little bit better, and everyone's like, what, and of course, in any individual person's lives, so many other things affect their economic well-being so much more that the effect of the tariffs are hard. It's hard to see unless you look at data, and it's not a really big discernible difference. And for most people. And so the thing is that given that that's the case, how are these trade agreements going to have the big bang that Trump says they're going to have? Because they never do. That's why people are pissed at free trade agreements so often, because they feel they've been promised utopia and they get a world that's meh. And, and so I just don't see any gains that are going to come that will be significant. And they're huge losses. You're losing market share to China, or Chinese market share to Brazil, Australia, to everybody else in the world. And so I just don't see that there's a gain. You know, they've never articulated what gain there is, unless you believe that there's this massive distortion and that they're ripping off the US and that now they'll stop. You have to believe that lie, and it is a misrepresentation. May not be a lie because I think the guy believes it. We have trade deficits because people invest in our country, and they take some of the money they earn from selling us stuff and they invest it in our stock market. It all balances out, and that's just the way it works. And yet, he's saying that all those trade deficits can go away. Yeah, they can go away if people start thinking the U.S. sucks as an investment and they no longer want to invest in our country. I wouldn't like to live in that country, that version of the USA. But this idea, I just don't see the gain. What you think you're going to gain from a deal now, right? At least the tariff argument and reshoring, I don't think it'll work. It's never worked, but at least if it, there's a logic to what you might gain. Here, it's like, look, the tariffs are, the trade agreements are already in place. We have high volumes of trade. What are you going to gain from renegotiating, right? And so I just don't see that there's anything there to be had.
What it all boils down to me is a lot of people commenting on tariffs have no idea how tariffs work. That's just the bottom line. Have no idea how tariffs work. That's
Outside of market manipulation? I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't say that. I'm sorry.
and the notion that this notion that we're always getting ripped off. Do we not know how America works? Do you think countries are just ripping us off? You don't think we're getting anything out of any deal that we make in outside countries? What kind of fool thinks that way? There are countries we make trade deals with that we just strip them of all their natural resources. It's laughable. Like, how do you not understand how this? We're supposed to be the leaders in capitalism, and you don't think we're getting anything out of the deal?
You have to believe that generations of policymakers in every country in the Western world, that generations of economists in the West and around the world, and the Chinese economists, they went to Stanford. I shared an office with one, and they went to University of Rochester. You have to believe that all of these people are wrong, and that these guys are right. And they have written that in the USTR when they gave that explanation of how they came up with the countervailing or the reciprocal tariff rate. They had a line. They actually said that. And I just said, do you realize the hubris of that statement? Everyone is wrong except you. And you've got Peter Navarro, some guy who couldn't get a decent job anywhere, was a heretic in economics, makes up fake people to cite in his books, right? This is the guy who's the freaking genius that we should all listen to, not all these other economists all around the world. And you see Greg and I just sit and we will agree with each other because people that study this learn it. And there's things you learn very quickly and very, that get into you. And there's this is the one area. Economics is the one social science you can get a Nobel Prize in because it's the most scientific of sciences. So you have to believe all of those guys are wrong.
Harold,
Right?
All of these professionals are just wrong.
Harold, I have a question. Why do you think that people think that applying tariffs or raising tariffs on a country will bring those jobs back to the United States? Is there any proof of that in history?
To my knowledge, no. But that's not an area I'm well versed in, but I don't. The math's not mathing, uh, and it doesn't make sense. Because again, you're increasing costs over here and expecting people to hire more people while you're increasing their business costs. I can't see how that works out. But who
Greg,
am I?
I'm
I'm not an
Greg,
economist.
Greg, I'm not an expert on tariffs. I'm not an economist either. But my common brain says if tariffs are raised and imposed harshly on China, and I'm looking at all the crap in my house that says made in China, my brain kind of says, wait a minute, this stuff is going to become more expensive.
You are correct to think that. I'm going to try to play devil's advocate, and I'm definitely not siding on the side of tariffs. So
Uh-oh.
let's say everything goes perfectly as Trump planned. Manufacturing comes back to the United States.
First of all,
Okay.
right there.
What are we manufacturing? Pencils? I mean, I just need
No, right? And imagine all these Americans are happy to be working in the factory, you know? Um, Maybe that can help the deficit if we're exporting a lot more, because the entire GDP, if we're able to export a lot more than we import, so put out our goods and services to the world rather than take in, maybe that can balance the deficit. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts?
That's a lot of pencils.
I know, right?
The deficit, the trade deficit exists because when we send dollars overseas, the people that get them choose to hold on to them in some fashion because they see them as a store of value. They see them as a good thing, and they see our part of that is faith in the dollar, the universal the universal nature of it. It's traditional stability. A lot of people hold dollar savings because they don't trust their currency, and it's a hedge against their own government's currency going crazy. But those are kind of small numbers. In the big picture, the big flows come back, trillions of dollars come to the US in investments.
Yep.
And tariffs do nothing to affect that, right? If you sell, tariffs say, all right, things are going to be more expensive, so we're going to raise 25% on the cost of these imported goods. No, the foreign country doesn't pay it, but the importer will, you'll be able to sell less. Supply and demand. The price went up, we'll only be able to sell less. So we're going to import less, but we're still going to pump dollars overseas. And those investors, tariffs or not, still face those sellers who've just gotten our dollars. They face the same choice. Do I buy shit that America makes, or do I buy investments in America? Right? Do I find someone like Greg and say, Greg, hook me up, and bet on the future? Because that's the essence, and that is not affected by tariffs. What it is affected by is incompetence, right? It is affected by a huge trade deficit. It is affected by Moody's dropping our tariff rating. And if you screw with the bond markets, you're going to be in trouble. And uh, apparently, in the Clinton administration, one of the Democrat towards the end of it said, if I come back in a future life, I want to be the bond markets because they can intimidate anyone, even the president. And they were reflecting the fact that Bill Clinton and his administration listened to Alan Greenspan, who told him, your job is to sit here and manage this thing reliably. That's it. Don't pick winners. Don't try to get America to be in charge of digital, TV, or excuse me, high def TV, because that was one of Bill Clinton's big things. We need to invest in high def TV like the Germans and the Japanese. And Alan Greenspan's like, no. You just sit there. You make the right choices. That's the discipline that Trump is utterly lacking in. And that is what may change people's view. And again, you don't want that to happen. We don't want that to happen. The tariffs won't do it. Mismanagement of the U.S. economy might.
I agree.
I struggle with the notion of trade deficit. And the reason why is there's never going to be a one-to-one trade. There's never going to be a one-to-one ratio. And we are we are over consumers to the point to where we don't. And I think we've had this conversation briefly in other shows, but we don't produce enough to satisfy our own needs. But yet we expect if we go and buy, say, grain from over here or, furniture, food from over there, that there needs to be some level of reciprocation. And I just don't see it because we get what we need and go out with it with whatever country. Likewise, they go out and get what they need to take care of their own people. So this fight to make everyone reciprocate the same amount of quote unquote dollars that we spend that they must spend back with us. I just don't see it. I don't understand it. It's difficult for it to make sense to me because I know how we consume, and other countries have a different mindset as it relates to that. We're
You
very
know,
wasteful.
I
you
feel
know
like
what's
there's some
crazy?
missing information. I feel like we don't have all of the information from
Well,
the
hey,
administration.
oh well, yeah, that's always going to happen. Too. Also, I know this is off topics of tariffs and stocks, but this administration has produced the least amount of transcripts from meetings than any other presidency. So that's one reason why they don't like you being able to see transcripts and being able to say, "Hey, you said this and you said this." Everything has to be fake news. But when you mention Harold, when you said overconsumption, it always brings me back to thinking about how we overconsume. And I used this example before. Within a 3 mile radius of me in every direction, there are like 14 grocery stores packed to the gills. And the amount of food they throw away that's not used is ridiculous. There's two Publixes within walking distance, three Harris Teeters, six Food Lions, and that's just for the grocery stores I named within walking distance of me. And I look at that and I go, this is insane. It's crazy. But anyway, Greg has dinner to go to with his amazing fiance. Dave's got to go back to be Paul Bunyan up there in Maine. And Harold, I think he's just going to sleep. Uh, and I am going to bid everybody farewell. This was a great episode. Thank you, Greg, for coming
Thank you
on.
guys for having me. Good to talk with you all.
Good to have you, Greg. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure
Thanks,
we're
Ray.
more fun to come.
I'm pretty sure we're going to discuss this topic again. It's not going anyway soon. And I'm thinking about what a comedian said. He said, "What the hell am I going to do when Trump's presidency is over? We got so much to talk about 3 years from now. What are we going to talk about? What are we going to, JD Vance might run. So that might give us a lot to talk about.
No,
Assholes are eternal. Don't worry.
no.
I am going to start the t shirts, JD Vance and Marty Taylor Green for presidency. I'm going to start those t shirts.
2028. Yes.
That's gonna force Dave to vote Democrat again. Woo!